Hi guys, it is Tamara. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about bereavement. And I think that this needs to be titled Traumatic Bereavement because the process interferes with a variety of domains. And I'm not sure that there's a lot of research on this topic. At least when I did my own research exploration regarding this, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of research on this topic of bereavement from a traumatic or trauma-based perspective. So I'm going to be touching on that today and continue our conversation from Monday on traumatic grief. So thank you so much for coming back to my channel. For all of you who are subscribed and participating and sharing your experiences, thank you so much. And for those who are new, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button so you can stick around with us and be a part of our community. The benefits for you in today's videos, I'm going to highlight the various domains that traumatic bereavement or just bereavement in general tends to impact. So let's just go ahead and get started. So, I'm still not in my office. I'm still doing teletherapy sessions and still talking with people, via consultations using FaceTime apps and platforms. So I'm hoping to get back into the office June the 17th. And around that time, I'm going to be doing a live YouTube video. So I encourage you guys to be looking out for those things, right? Put your glasses on, your magnifying glasses, and look out for the date that I'm going to start, kind of advertising that. So I want to talk about trauma, but I'm also going to be answering your questions during that live session. So I figured I should probably throw that in there just so you'll be aware that it is coming up. So, and I have shared with you over the past few weeks since I lost my grandmother, I've shared with you kind of my thoughts and my feelings and my experience and what she dealt with and what I'm dealing with in my family. So I think I've been pretty open and vulnerable with you regarding that. So I figured I would continue the conversation because I think a lot of you are relating to the experience of grief and loss, traumatic grief, and now bereavement. So let's just go ahead and jump in to the conversation of bereavement. Now, when you think about bereavement, what comes to mind for you? Do you think about bereavement as, the process of grief that has an ending, right? There's an end. Like you can't grieve forever. Or do you see bereavement as kind of like stages, right? You have to go through these stages and then you start to grieve. Or do you think of bereavement as a process that will last for a certain period of time and then you'll never experience it ever again? There's a lot of people, and including my clients, who believe that bereavement is either something that you experience for a short period of time and it ends, or it's something that you experience in stages, right, or at certain points in your life, or it's something that you experience and you're never going to experience it again. So my clients and people that I've talked to in consultations, they see bereavement in that way. But I like to encourage those who speak with me to see bereavement as a process. And that process can happen at any point in your life. You can actually regress to that bereavement stage, or you can progress and still experience certain aspects of bereavement. And depending on what that traumatic loss was, will depend on how often and how much you're going to experience that bereavement process, if that makes any sense, okay? So there's specific domains that I want you to kind of be aware of when you are thinking about the process of bereavement, all right? And the first domain for struggling with traumatic grief is the family. I think there's a lot of impact that's negative on families during the bereavement process, right? If you lose a loved one or if you lose a close family friend and that family was close and emotionally attached to that person that is now gone, the traumatic process can begin within the family, right? So there could be a breakdown in communication between family members. There could be communication styles that are really taking over and dominating the relationship between two people in that family, right? So the aggressive communication style or the passive aggressive communication style can take over that family relationship in such a way that it makes communication between you and another family member almost impossible, right? Because they're hurting as it is, and now the traumatic grief has added a different component onto everything, and so the communication process has broken down and it's not the same. Now, you also want to keep in mind mood fluctuations, okay, of family members. So, fluctuating moods in terms of one day you're depressed, the next day you're not. One day you're anxious and the next day you're not, right? Or you're like a roller coaster. Your emotions are up and down. Those things can impact a family a great deal when somebody is going through the bereavement or the grief process. Another thing to keep in mind is a breakdown in communication as a result of isolation and withdrawal. You have family members who do not know how to deal with grief. So they deal with it by isolating and withdrawing from the entire family. So the bereavement process can truly impact the family system. It can also impact marriage, right? So there's a breakdown in communication within the marriage as well. There's also a numbing process where the person within that marriage, or both of you within that marriage, can begin to feel kind of numb, and you're just going through the motions of daily life. You're not connecting emotionally, psychologically, or even socially. You're not really paying attention to each other. You're just trying to deal with what's going on the inside of you. So marriage can be impacted as well. There's also the issue of a lack of communication within the marriage. So the family and the marriage domains can really suffer during the bereavement process. We also want to throw in parenting, okay? Parenting can also be impacted. Parenting styles, maybe a parenting style that was authoritative and fair and balanced has now become authoritarian, meaning that you've become like a Hitler, right? You're not as flexible and loving and open and gentle as maybe you once were, because the pressure of the bereavement, of the grief, of the traumatic grief has really been insurmountable for you. So now you add on the component or the addition of the parenting or your responsibility as a parent, and it can compound things and make things a little bit worse. Okay, so parenting styles and parenting communication can really change as well. You also want to look at parenting in terms of not validating the child, right? So during the grief process or the bereavement process, children are picking up on the adults around them, and sometimes they need an adult to validate them and to say, you know what, this is a hard time for all of us, and it's okay to feel anger. It's okay to feel depressed. It's okay to bargain with God. It's okay to feel that you're not going to accept what's going on. So children need to be validated. Well, sometimes that validation is lacking because the parent is suffering themselves. So aside from parenting, aside from the family, aside from marriage domains being impacted, we also have the work domain, right? You may go to work and suffer from poor memory and concentration. You also may suffer from not wanting to be bothered with the people on your job, right? I'm just going to get a job done. I want to get my paycheck and I want to go home. I don't want to deal with communicating and mingling with people. I just want everybody to leave me alone so I can get my job done, go home, and feel better, right? So the work domain can be impacted as well. We also have social life, right? So no motivation to be a part of social relationships, no desire to want to go to restaurants and want to mingle with people, right? We also have ineffective support systems, right? So having friends or social support systems who are not really supportive, right? They don't get the grief that you're going through. They don't get the pain that you're going through. We also have kind of like this lack of desire to communicate and connect with other people. You just want to be left alone. Okay, and that's the social domain. Now we also have the work in the leisure domain, right? So yes, you have that work relationship, but sometimes work also involves leisure. So going out for drinks after work, right? Going to happy hours, right? Having cocktail parties and engaging with colleagues. Or there may be, for the person who's grieving or trying to heal from traumatic loss, there may be what's known as anhedonia. Okay, anhedonia is a lack of pleasure and experiences once enjoyed, okay, for lack of a better word, right? So you once enjoyed these experiences and now you no longer. Anhedonia. There may also be a sense of learned helplessness, right? So I can't help myself out of these feelings of bereavement or grief and loss, so I'm just going to give in to them, and then that can cause isolation and withdrawal within the work relationship, within leisure time as well. So all of these domains are impacted by the bereavement process. We have the family, we have marriage, parenting, we have work and leisure, and then we also have social life. These are the 5 domains that tend to be impacted by bereavement. There are other domains as well, but for the purposes of our video, we're just going to narrow it down to 5 domains. And I want to talk about in the next video how to cope with and how to deal with those domains. You know, what do you do when you realize that your functionality is being impaired by the grief that you are experiencing, by the traumatic grief that you're experiencing, by the bereavement process? How do I deal with things in a healthy way, in a better way? You know, how do I clear my mind? How do I move this void and this pain so that I can move forward and not be stuck? Okay. So I'm going to be talking about that. I probably will post that video on Sunday, so stay tuned for that. Now, let me just add some statistics in here as well that, you know, bereavement can sometimes occur in intensity, okay, for lack of a better word, right? There's an intensity. There's mild bereavement, there's moderate bereavement, and there's severe. People who have severe bereavement are impacted daily by the bereavement itself and the traumatic grief that they're experiencing. Their life is impacted. Their functionality at work is impacted. Their relationships are impacted. The way that they perceive and think about life is impacted. Everything that involves their world is impacted by bereavement or by that traumatic grief. Now, severe bereavement impacts about 10 to 15% of individuals within our society, about 10 to 15% of our individuals in our society. And so I think it's important to realize that bereavement is not just a matter of the mind, right? Get over it, you're going to be fine. Bereavement is a matter of the heart and of the mind. And it triggers our emotional system, our physiological system. It triggers the amygdala, which is the almond-sized part of the brain that I talk about on this channel a lot. It really is our emotional center. Okay, it's where emotional memories are stored, and it's where our emotional reactions to things occur. But bereavement and traumatic grief also impacts the cortex, which is kind of like the logical thinking part of all of this, right? How we perceive our reality, how we think about those that we have lost, how we think about our own pain, right? So bereavement impacts the cortex, it impacts the amygdala, and it also impacts the thalamus, which is another part of the brain that I talk about on this channel. It really deals with the emotional centers of the brain, which is the amygdala and the thalamus, but it also deals with the cortex, which is a higher order thinking part of the brain that processes things, and it kind of the cortex helps us work things out in our mind and perceive things. So bereavement impacts that area, but bereavement also impacts the fight or flight system, all right? And it's that central nervous system dominance that I talk about all the time. It kicks on that fight or flight system even when it doesn't have to be kicked on. It's triggered, right? So the bereavement process not only impacts us psychologically, but impacts us emotionally and physiologically as well. So it's a huge topic and something that I think needs further attention on my channel. So I'm going to continue to talk about these things, guys. Let me know in the comment section below how you feel about this, and if this has been your experience. I'm going to be coming back on Sunday with another video, and I'm going to continue to pick and pull this topic apart, and then we're going to jump back to intergenerational trauma for the month of June. So I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.